Pain Hustlers by Evan Hughes. The story begins in Saginaw, Michigan, introducing Dr. Gavin Awerbuch, a neurologist whose practice evolved into a busy pain management clinic. Disheveled and often wearing casual clothes under a lab coat that could use washing, Awerbuch cultivated an unpretentious air, treating a large volume of patients, many suffering from chronic pain, often retired or on disability, and frequently reliant on Medicare or Medicaid. As the medical community grew wary of long-term opioid use, Awerbuch became a last resort for many patients seeking potent pain medications. In January 2013, Awerbuch suggested a new fentanyl-based under-the-tongue spray called Subsys to a patient complaining of moderate back pain. This patient was actually an undercover agent recording the encounter. The investigation initially focused on fraudulent diagnostic testing Awerbuch was billing for, often performing brief, bogus exams. But the prescription of Subsys, an extremely potent opioid, approved only for breakthrough cancer pain in patients already on around-the-clock opioids, raised serious alarms. Agents Mark Hegemeyer, HHS-OIG, and Travis Lloyd, FBI, interviewed other Subsys patients, finding individuals like Kendra, a young mother whose appearance had drastically deteriorated, and another woman whose husband was furious about the drug making his wife incoherent and leading to rehab. Subsys was not only powerful, but also incredibly expensive, costing thousands per month, requiring complex prior authorizations from insurers that Awerbuch's clinic repeatedly navigated. On May 6, 2014, agents raided Awerbuch's clinic and arrested him for healthcare fraud and illegal prescribing. Awerbuch, already aware of scrutiny following an earlier search of his upscale suburban home, revealing a hidden Lotus sports car and valuable collections, was defeated but cooperative. He was taken to Detroit, where investigators from Boston, including FBI agent Paul Baumrind, were waiting. They weren't prosecuting Awerbuch, but saw him as a key asset in their larger investigation into the manufacturer of Subsys, Insys Therapeutics. Insys was a rapidly growing Arizona-based startup founded by Dr. John Kapoor, an Indian immigrant visionary. Its success was almost entirely built on Subsys sales, leading to a stellar IPO in 2013. Awerbuch began cooperating. Days later, he informed Baumrind that Alec Burlakoff, Insys's head of sales, wanted to meet him for dinner despite his recent arrest. Baumrind instructed Awerbuch to accept the invitation and wear a wire. The narrative shifts back to 2001, introducing Mike Babich, a young Chicago native working at Northern Trust Bank. Tall, with a broad build, Babich was ambitious and seen as a rising star. His boss suggested he interview with a wealthy client, John Kapoor, who needed help managing his finances. Kapoor, born in India and witness to the violence of partition, had earned a pharmacy PhD in the US and made his fortune primarily in generic drugs. His first major success, Lifamed, grew rapidly but faced serious FDA violations concerning patient health and data integrity. Kapoor sold Lifamed for nearly $1 billion just as these issues were surfacing, later facing lawsuits from the buyer, Fujisawa, alleging concealment of problems. Kapoor settled, maintaining his innocence regarding the FDA issues, but invoking the Fifth Amendment before Congress. Despite this controversial history, Kapoor built a reputation as a relentless businessman and philanthropist, adopting 4 children with his wife, Editha. Babich, initially intimidated by the intense, shorter Kapoor, took a portfolio analyst job at Kapoor's family office, EJ Financial. For years, their communication was minimal and formal. Babich proved his worth by advising Kapoor to sell his large stake in Health South before a major fraud scandal broke, saving Kapoor millions and earning a $5,000 bonus check. Kapoor then began mentoring Babich, paying for his evening MBA at Northwestern. In 2002, Kapoor co-founded Insys Therapeutics with scientist George Kartayel, planning to fund it by first launching a generic version of Marinol, synthetic THC. One longer-term project was a fentanyl spray. Kapoor often attributed his motivation for Subsys to the suffering of his wife, Editha, who battled breast cancer and died in 2005 after enduring severe pain. Kapoor was devastated, withdrawing from work for months, during which Babich increasingly stepped up. Subsys was designed as a branded reformulation of fentanyl, delivered via an under-the-tongue spray. While novel drug development is risky, reformulations are less so. Fentanyl was already used in hospitals and available in take-home forms like patches. Insys aimed to compete with existing rapid-onset fentanyl products, TIRFs, like Cephalon's Actic, a lozenge on a stick, and Fentora, a dissolving tablet, which were approved only as the breakthrough cancer pain. Subsys's spray delivery, Kapoor hoped, would prove superior and capture a lucrative market, despite TIRFs primarily being prescribed off-label for conditions like back pain, a practice illegal for companies to promote, but common among doctors. Insys planned to seek FDA approval solely for the narrow breakthrough cancer pain indication, knowing doctors would likely use it more broadly, mirroring Cephalon's experience, which led to a $425 million settlement in 2008 for illegal off-label promotion of Actic. Despite the ongoing opioid crisis and heightened scrutiny of manufacturers like Purdue Pharma, Kapoor pushed forward with Subsys. In 2007, he moved Insys to Arizona, naming Babich COO. The company faced dire financial straits after the generic Marinol project faltered and 2 IPO attempts failed amid the 2008 financial crisis. Insys was deeply in debt, mostly to Kapoor himself, who converted much of it to equity, diluting Kartayel's stake, leading to a later lawsuit. Everything hinged on Subsys. Finally, in early 2011, Phase 3 trial results showed Subsys worked significantly faster than competitors, relieving pain in as little as 5 minutes, a potential game changer. Kapoor named Babich CEO, intending him to be the public face, while Kapoor remained chairman and strategist. With FDA approval seemingly near in late 2011, Kapoor and Babich needed marketing expertise to launch Subsys independently. They hired Matt Napolitano, a former Cephalon executive who had launched Fentora. Slender, bespectacled, and analytical, Napolitano presented a detailed marketing playbook. He understood the TIRF market and the regulatory landscape, having worked at Cephalon during its government investigation and subsequent corporate integrity agreement. He was concerned by Kapoor's low-cost model, insistence on not hiring dedicated legal or compliance officers, leading to friction. Napolitano's playbook emphasized targeting a small pool of high-prescribing doctors. Using pharmacy data from firms like IQVA, Insys identified that roughly 170 doctors wrote 30% of all TIRF prescriptions, with the top 25 accounting for 10%. Insys planned to focus its limited sales force on these whales. An initial step was convening an advisory board of key opinion leaders, KOLs, many of them top prescribers, for a weekend meeting and dinner at Kapoor's expensive Scottsdale restaurant, Roca Accor, to build relationships. Weeks later, on January 4, 2012, the FDA approved Subsys. Insys rapidly hired a sales force, led by VP of Sales Sean Simon, and 5 regional managers, overseeing about 45 reps nationwide. Tracy Crane, struggling financially in Florida, was hired by Southeast manager Tony Bryant, despite lacking pharma experience. She was taken aback by the low $40,000 base salary, but accepted due to the promise of high commissions and stock options. At the March 2012 launch meeting in Scottsdale, Crane and fellow rookie Mia Guzman noticed many reps were young, inexperienced, and strikingly attractive, part of Kapoor's strategy to hire PhD, poor, hungry, and driven reps cheaply, motivating them with uncapped bonuses. The atmosphere was flirtatious and intense. Napolitano presented the official messaging, emphasizing the breakthrough cancer pain indication and 30-minute efficacy data. Kapoor, furious, demanded reps highlight the competitor's indications, implying broader use, and the 5-minute onset time, even suggesting reps use 5-minute hourglasses. He overruled Napolitano, having Babich deliver the aggressive message, including telling the sales force, Subsys is good for everybody, any pain patient, echoing Cephalon's illegal pain is pain mantra. Napolitano was distraught, fearing a repeat of Cephalon's legal troubles. The Subsys launch initially sputtered. Reps struggled to gain access to doctors, facing established relationships with competitors. Crane had early success with Dr. Stephen Chun, a Florida whale dubbed the 6 Million Man. But his prescriptions soon waned, possibly due to relationships with a competitor's rep and his girlfriend, Aksa Nawaz. Reps encountered varied clinic environments, from typical offices to troubling ones like Dr. Paul Madison's dingy strip mall clinic near Chicago O'Hare, where a rep saw someone counting large wads of cash. Insys exploited the FDA-mandated TIRF-REMS safety program, using its real-time prescription data for marketing, tracking individual doctors and patients. However, early sales were slow, and many patients didn't refill, alarming Kapoor. He fired Sean Simon, putting Babich temporarily in charge of sales, and pressured managers like Tony Bryant to fire underperforming reps. Amid the turmoil and fear, Napolitano saw positive trends, but Kapoor deemed it the worst fucking launch in pharmaceutical history. It was then that Alec Burlakoff, a charismatic and aggressive salesman, applied for a regional manager job. Short but projecting swagger, Burlakoff had a controversial past. Fired from Eli Lilly for participating in a questionable Prozac weekly mailing scheme. He then became a top performer at Cephalon, selling Actic and Fentora, known for pushing rules. He pitched himself to Kapoor and Babich as the turnaround artist they needed, boasting ground-level fentanyl sales experience. Despite warnings about compliance issues from a manager who knew him at Cephalon, Kapoor was immediately impressed, declaring, "I think we just found our vice president of sales." Burlakoff started as Southeast manager. On a ride-along with Tracy Crane to see Dr. Chun, he explained the forthcoming speaker program. Its real purpose wasn't education, but funneling cash to doctors, speakers, as a quid pro quo for prescribing Subsys. Crane asked, "Isn't that illegal?" Burlakoff brushed it off, suggesting fines were just a cost of doing business. The speaker program, delayed by Kapoor's cost concerns, was finally funded, with Burlakoff leading a pilot in the Southeast. Insys held a national speaker training event in Chicago, attended by top prescribers. Many former Cephalon speakers poached by Napolitano. Burlakoff strategized to win over Chun, inviting him and his girlfriend Nawaz to dinner. He also hired his high school friend Joe Rowan specifically to target Dr. Shulu Ruin in Mobile, Alabama. Rowan, a former Cephalon rep under Burlakoff, had a unique bond with Ruin, having once driven cross-country with him. Rowan, paid minimally but offered high commissions, focused solely on Ruin and his partner, Dr. John Patrick Couch. Ruin, already an Insys advisor, rapidly became the top Subsys prescriber nationwide after Rowan's arrival and enrollment in the speaker program. Burlakoff's region soared, solidifying his rise. In August 2012, Burlakoff submitted his plan of attack memo, promising to personally meet top doctors and implement Kapoor's desired effective dose message, pushing higher, more expensive Subsys strengths, incentivized by higher commission rates. Despite Napolitano's warnings about regulatory risks, Burlakoff embraced the strategy. He was formally promoted to VP of Sales in September. This ignited a power struggle with Napolitano over control of the now National Speaker Program, ISP. Kapoor, concerned about costs and ROI, demanded a report calculating how much each speaker's prescriptions generated versus their payments. Napolitano initially refused, screaming at Kapoor, but ultimately relented, producing the ROI report, the smoking gun. which the four men reviewed and then destroyed. At a September 2012 national sales meeting, Awerbuch debuted as VP, motivating the sales force with promises of wealth and advocating for them against unrealistic corporate demands. Around this time, he met Sunrise Lee, an exotic dancer at Rachel's Strip Club in Florida. Impressed by her persuasive skills and tenacity, she had a difficult upbringing and was emancipated at 16, and attracted to her, Awerbuch decided she exemplified the poor, hungry, and driven profile. Overruling Babich's concerns about her lack of experience, Awerbuch hired Lee as the Midwest regional manager. Lee targeted Dr. Paul Madison in Illinois, whose clinic reps found sketchy. His partner had lost his license for trading drugs for sex. Lee quickly built rapport with Madison, meeting him for drinks off-site. Madison began prescribing Subsys. Awerbuch fast-tracked Madison into the speaker program. Soon after, Madison was indicted for unrelated insurance fraud. Despite Napolitano's objections, Kapoor and Babich decided to keep paying Madison as a speaker, prioritizing his high prescription volume. Insys continued paying him for years as he awaited trial. By late 2012, sales were climbing, but insurance denials became a major hurdle. Most Subsys prescriptions were off-label, non-cancer pain, which most insurers, especially Medicare, wouldn't cover without specific justifications like a cancer diagnosis and documented failure of cheaper alternatives, like generic Actic. To overcome this, Insys established the Insys Reimbursement Center, IRC, initially led by Elizabeth Gurrieri, hired for her experience at McKesson's prior authorization hub. The IRC pilot program quickly proved successful. Moving the operation fully in-house in January 2013, the IRC team, managed by VP Mike Gurrieri's boss, developed deceptive tactics. Gurrieri instructed her team to imply they worked for the doctor's office, falsely claim patients had tried and failed other drugs, and routinely add a dysphagia, difficulty swallowing diagnosis, to suggest pills weren't viable alternatives. Most importantly, they developed the spiel, carefully worded scripts to mislead insurers into believing patients had breakthrough cancer pain when they didn't. To further incentivize approvals ahead of the planned IPO, Insys began paying IRC staff bonuses based on the number of prescriptions they successfully pushed through insurance. The IRC's approval rate soared past competitors, reaching nearly 90%. Unbeknownst to Insys leadership, Rep. Ray Furchak, disturbed by Awerbuch's tactics, had filed a secret qui tam whistleblower lawsuit in September 2012, alleging kickbacks and off-label promotion. He recorded calls, capturing damning coaching from manager Karen Hill on targeting money-hungry doctors. Furchak was fired for poor performance before meeting with the DOJ, which ultimately declined to intervene in his case, likely deeming Insys too small then for a major return. His unsealed complaint went unnoticed. Insys successfully launched its IPO in May 2013, becoming the year's top performer, making Kapoor and Babich immensely wealthy on paper. With the IPO validating their strategy, Insys focused on maximizing prescriptions from whales like Ruan and Couch in mobile. Natalie Perhacs, the rep hired at Ruan's request, managed their speaker programs and acceded to favors, navigating Ruan's flirtation. The clinic, PPSA, co-owned by the doctors, was described as Wolf of Wall Street in a pain clinic. Couch, struggling with addiction and often absent, had nurses like Justin Palmer forging prescriptions. Palmer and another nurse, Bridget Parker, were themselves battling opioid addiction while treating patients. Ruan, arrogant and business-focused, expanded the clinic's revenue streams, notably by opening C&R Pharmacy attached to the clinic, capturing profits from the drugs they prescribed, including huge volumes of Subsys. Perhacs earned enormous commissions. Patient Kathy Burns, prescribed high-dose Subsys off-label despite a history of addiction, spiraled downward, eventually dying after being terminated as a patient when her insurance stopped covering Subsys. Ruan had falsely certified to her insurer that she had cancer pain. In late 2013, a new competitor, Galena Biopharma, began marketing Abstral, another TIRF. Ruan and Couch, having missed investing early in Insys, bought over $1 million in Galena stock, hoping to profit by driving its sales. They began prescribing large amounts of Abstral, alarming Insys. Simultaneously, C&R Pharmacy hit distributor caps, limiting its Subsys supply. Believing incorrectly that Galena was shipping Abstral directly to C&R, Kapoor and Babich flew to Mobile in February 2014. Over dinner, they agreed to a direct ship deal for Subsys, giving the entire distributor discount to C&R to incentivize the doctors to favor Subsys over Abstral. Meanwhile, the federal investigation intensified. In December 2013, Insys received an HHS OIG subpoena. Two more whistleblowers, Mia Guzman and Torgny Anderson, had filed suits. Skadden was hired for an internal probe, but recommendations like halting the speaker program were ignored. In May 2014, Dr. Awerbuch was arrested. Insys publicly distanced itself, but Berlikov, Simon, and Rep. Brett Sinansky met Awerbuch at a diner. Awerbuch, cooperating and wearing a wire, tried to elicit incriminating statements. Berlikov suspected a setup and deflected. Insys promoted Szymanski despite his role in Awerbuch's sham programs. The IRC continued its fraud. The situation worsened. In June 2015, Connecticut nurse Heather Alfonso pled guilty to accepting Insys kickbacks via sham speaker programs arranged partly by Natalie Levine, now Babich's wife. Alfonso's plea directly implicated Insys in bribery. The company settled state investigations but faced mounting patient lawsuits. Babich sensed he was being frozen out by Kapoor. In November 2015, Kapoor met Babich at Roca Acor and told him he would be the fall guy. Berlikov left Insys in mid-2015, feeling betrayed as the company later terminated his consulting income. In February 2016, Natalie Perhacs pled guilty. Berlikov, fearing he was being set up, contacted prosecutors in May 2016 without a lawyer. His disastrous, self-serving interview only worsened his position. In December 2016, federal agents simultaneously arrested Babich, Berlikov, Gurry, Simon, Rowan, and Lee across multiple states on RICO conspiracy charges. Kapoor remained untouched initially but was finally arrested at his Phoenix home in October 2017. The unprecedented prosecution of top pharma executives under RICO faced challenges. Insys settled corporate charges, but the individuals faced prison. As the January 2019 trial neared, Berlikov, realizing the strength of the evidence against him, agreed to cooperate and pled guilty in November 2018. Days later, Babich also flipped, pleading guilty. Their cooperation provided prosecutors powerful insider testimony against the remaining 5 defendants, especially Kapoor. The Boston trial lasted over 3 months. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence of kickbacks through the speaker program, targeting whales like Chun, Awerbuch, Alfonso, Ruan, Couch, Madison, Somerville, Clough, and systematic insurance fraud via the IRC. Cooperating witnesses, including Awerbuch, Alfonso, Guerrieri, Babich, and Berlikov, detailed the schemes. Patient testimony highlighted the human cost. The defense argued the conduct was industry standard, blamed rogue employees or cooperators seeking deals, and questioned whether a true agreement constituting conspiracy existed among the defendants. Berlikov proved a dramatic but damaging witness for both sides. In May 2019, after nearly 4 weeks of deliberation, the jury found all 5 remaining defendants, Kapoor, Gurry, Simon, Rowan, and Lee, guilty of RICO conspiracy. Sentencing occurred in January 2020. Judge Burroughs handed down sentences significantly lower than prosecutors requested, but still substantial. Gurry, 33 months. Simon, 33 months. Rowan, 27 months. Lee, 1 year and 1 day. Cooperators Babich, 30 months, and Berlikov, 26 months, received credit for their assistance. John Kapoor, the billionaire founder, received 66 months, 5.5 years. Insys declared bankruptcy shortly after its corporate settlement, leaving limited funds for victims and whistleblowers. The case marked a rare instance of pharmaceutical executives facing prison for opioid-related crimes. Though the summary concludes by noting that Insys's downfall might have been avoided if it had implemented the standard compliance guardrails and safety nets common at larger companies, which often shield individuals, even amid misconduct. If you enjoyed this book breakdown, please consider liking this video and subscribing to get notified when we post our next book.